Foreign Minister Qin Gang meets U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Beijing. In Moscow, Putin rejects a peace plan for Ukraine proposed by African leaders. And a final swim around Victoria Harbour before the double ducks leave the city. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. Foreign Minister Qin Gang has welcomed visiting U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. The pair shook hands and held discussions in what could be a pivotal 2 days in China-U.S. relations. David Garrett reports.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken descends the stairs and steps foot on Beijing soil. The first time America's top diplomat has come to China in 5 years and since President Biden took office.
China has some legitimate difficulties unrelated to the United States. And I think one of the things that balloon caused was not so much that it got shot down, but I don't think the leadership knew where it was and knew what was in it and knew what was going on. I think it was more embarrassing than it was intentional. And so I'm hoping that over the next several months, I'll be meeting with Xi again.
Biden on the campaign trail, stopping to speak to the press in the US just before Blinken landed in China. He was referring to the US shooting down a suspected Chinese spy balloon in early February. Blinken was due in Beijing that same month, but the trip was postponed until today after the world's two largest economies fell out over the balloon incident. Qin greeted Blinken at the door to Beijing State Guest House rather than inside the building as is customary. Qin asking Blinken in English about his long trip. Qin and Blinken shook hands and posed for photographs. Blinken has previously said he will challenge China on Taiwan, trade tariffs and human rights in Hong Kong and Xinjiang. The delegations of both sides sat down for talks. A preparatory phone call on Tuesday between Qin and Blinken made little progress. Perhaps a face-to-face conversation can ease tensions. Americans as far away as Los Angeles realise the trip's significance.
I think keeping discourse open is very important, and our relationship with China, obviously being two of the world's biggest powers, is very important.
I think that any course towards normalization, towards kind of de-intensifying, is a good thing.
During the two-day trip, Blinken is expected to have a meeting with Wang Yi, director of the Office of Foreign Affairs Commission of the Communist Party of China Central Committee, and possibly a conference with President Xi Jinping. Xi has already met one influential American this week, Bill Gates. David Garrett, TVB News.
Russian President Vladimir Putin on Saturday welcomed a group of African leaders to St. Petersburg, a day after they visited Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kiev. The 7 leaders, including South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, put forward a peace plan for ending the 16-month war between Russia and Ukraine. Details about the proposals were thin, but they found out fairly quickly that a solution is a long way off. Nasby Karim has more.
They came ready to outline their peace plan, but they were interrupted. 7 African leaders, after meeting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Friday, were in St. Petersburg on Saturday to see Russian President Vladimir Putin, armed with a 10-point peace plan to end the 16-month war. But the core issue of internationally recognized borders is a major obstacle. After Comoros, Senegal and South Africa offered presentations, Putin jumped in to make it clear that Moscow's annexation of 4 regions last year and the Crimean Peninsula in 2014 is non-negotiable. Zelensky's condition for peace is for Russia to withdraw completely from all occupied territories. With leaders from Egypt, Zambia, Uganda and Congo Republic also present, Putin told them that it was Ukraine and its Western allies who prompted the conflict. The Russian president also reaffirmed Moscow's commitment to Africa, saying Ukraine grain exports were not reducing high food prices because only 3% was going to poorer countries. The African plan also mentions a call for all children caught up in the war to be returned home. Putin said Russia was not preventing any Ukrainian children from returning, adding, "We took them out of a conflict zone, saving their lives." The visit comes as Ukraine continues its counter-offensive on the front lines, where Kiev claims to have retaken several villages. Ukrainian soldiers were shown patrolling the village of Blagodatne in Donetsk, one of the first settlements recaptured last week. Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden said he would not make it easier for Ukraine to join the NATO military alliance, saying they would be held to the highest standards, just like other countries.
So it's not going to make it easier. I think they've done everything relating to demonstrating the ability to coordinate militarily, but there's a whole issue of, is their system secure? Is it non-corrupt? Does it meet all the standards every other nation in NATO does? I think it will. I think it can, but it's not automatic.
Nazri Karim, TVB News.
French police clashed with demonstrators seeking to stop a high-speed rail project in the Alps on Saturday. 12 police officers were wounded. Some 2,000 protesters were in the Marianne Valley objecting to construction of the rail link, including a tunnel between Lyon and the Italian city of Turin. They say the plan to build the 270-kilometer high-speed train line will have heavy environmental impacts. The protest was banned by the local prefecture, but demonstrators were undeterred. They threw rocks at riot police, who responded with tear gas. Police said one demonstrator was wounded, while an environmental group put the number at 50, including 6 who were hospitalized. Authorities deployed around 2,000 police officers to maintain order. Here in the city, Hong Kongers flocked to the harbourfront this afternoon to bid farewell to the double ducks. This as one of the ducks took a swim around Central and Tsim Sha Tsui. Veronica Lin was with the ducks this afternoon.
Unstable weather accompanied the ducks' last day on public view. The observatory issued an amber warning at 8:35 a.m. and cancelled it at 10:05 a.m. Amid the unstable weather, Hong Kongers braved the rain to say farewell to the beloved double ducks exhibition this morning. The two birds were on show for little more than a week. One of the ducklings, at around 1:30 p.m., decided to go for a swim, allowing revelers along the harbourfront to catch a glimpse of the 18-meter-tall creature. It first swam towards the East Coast Park precinct in Fortress Hill. Some were even reckless enough to walk down the jetty. One resident said the exhibition was too short and that the lone duck swimming around the harbour is just like the winner of the pageant contest, Miss Hong Kong, making a victory lap. The lone duck then made its way across Victoria Harbour and over to the Avenue of the Stars in Tsim Sha Tsui, as well as the cultural centre. This father said this is a particularly special Father's Day and hopes the ducks will return in 2 to 3 years. During its adventure, the lone duck was followed by numerous boats as residents and tourists raced against time to frame the best duck picture. After more than 2 hours on the loose, the solitary duck paddled back towards the Convention and Exhibition Center to make its final bow. Organizers said throughout the exhibition, the ducks received around-the-clock care, as well as routine checks by divers at 6 every morning. We are on a boat tour with the ducks. Seeing them up close on the water is quite the experience and a special treat for those celebrating Father's Day. They're gone, but certainly not forgotten. Veronica Lin, TVB News.
A knife attack occurred at a Saiwan fast food restaurant today, resulting in a man's head being injured. Police arrested a 29-year-old man, with sources saying that the attack was sparked by a work-related dispute. The restaurant pulled down the shutters after the incident. Authorities said they received reports at around 3 p.m. about a knife attack at a fast food restaurant on Hill Road in Saiwan. Preliminary investigations found the restaurant's 38-year-old manager had an argument with a male employee regarding his work performance. The employee later walked across the street and allegedly grabbed 2 30-centimeter-long knives from a butcher shop before returning to the restaurant to attack the manager. The latter's body was covered in blood, but he managed to call for help. Police arrested the 29-year-old employee in a nearby area on suspicion of assault. The funeral of Tai Po murder victim Abby Choi was held this afternoon in Taiwan. The ceremony was held at Po Fook Memorial Hall and was closed to the public. Photos of Chois wearing pink clothing were placed at the entrance of the funeral house, with the color also serving as the event's theme. Friends, family and celebrities attended Choi's funeral, arriving at the funeral parlor by bus. A traditional Chinese funerary rite will be conducted tomorrow morning before the former socialite's cremation at Polin Monastery on Lantau Island. Secretary for Development Bernadette Lin has reiterated that the government still wishes to use part of the Fanling Golf Course to develop public housing units. This came after the majority of participants of 2 public hearings held by the Town Planning Board voiced their opposition to the housing proposal. Mimo Sengai tells us more.
Authorities plan to take back 32 hectares of the golf course land in Fanling, hoping to use about 9 hectares for public housing development. The proposal was objected by the majority of participants of 2 recent Town Planning Board public hearings. Speaking on a TVB program, Secretary for Development Bernadette Lin said she was not surprised, as people often join those hearings to oppose something. Facing the objection, Lin said the government will not change its mind. Lin also talked about the government's recent announcement about its labour importation policy, including a plan to bring in 12,000 construction workers. Employers are required to provide imported workers with either on-site or centralized accommodations after their arrival in the city. Lin explained that such an arrangement is needed.
It's just to ease the concerns of the local community about the possibility of the construction sector imported workers, because we are talking about 12,000. A quota of 12,000. We just do not want the local community to be concerned that because of this additional number, the competition among the grassroots for housing in Hong Kong will be augmented. Workers do not have their homes in Hong Kong, so the employers have to fulfill this responsibility of providing.
With some people questioning about the accommodation requirement, the Development Secretary said the public has to understand its objective.
This is not a free lunch. This is something I must clarify. The employers have to pay whatever rent is due to the authority running the centralized accommodation. And after they have paid, they may also, under the existing system, seek reimbursement from the imported workers up to a certain limit.
Would authorities do the same for local employees?
We have to leave it to the market to decide. If for the local labor in the construction sector, if they have this aspiration and their employer are willing to so provide and charge them a fee, the door is always open.
Lin added other measures will also be used to resolve the manpower shortage issue in the city, such as enhancing local employees' training and the application of innovation. Memus 9, TVB News.
Still to come on tonight's news. Ugandan authorities recover 41 bodies after a rebel group attacked a school. Locally, 5 franchised bus operators raised their fares. And Father's Day celebrations in town. Welcome back to TVB News. Ugandan authorities have recovered the bodies of 41 people, mostly students, after suspected rebels attacked a secondary school near the border with Congo. According to the Ugandan military, at least 6 people were abducted by the rebels, who fled across the border into Congo after the raid on Friday night. The victims included students, 1 guard, and 2 members of the local community who were killed outside the school. Some students suffered fatal burns when the rebels set fire to a dormitory, while others were shot or hacked with machetes. The raid was said to have involved about 5 attackers. Authorities said the atrocities were committed by the Allied Democratic Forces. It is an extremist group that established ties with the Islamic State group and has been launching attacks from its bases in eastern Congo. Saudi Arabia's foreign minister is in Iran for historic talks brokered by China. The longtime rivals have agreed to renew relations following years of hostility. Prince Faisal bin Farhan met with Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi. They carried out a symbolic handshake, a first in 7 years. Raisi said it was good to be talking to his near neighbors again, and he announced he expects to travel to Saudi Arabia soon. Earlier, Prince Faisal spoke with his Iranian counterpart. The two nations have been fighting a proxy war in Yemen, one of many sources of tension in recent times. Saudi Arabia called for a partnership to maintain maritime security in the Gulf. Back locally, 5 franchised bus operators in Hong Kong raised their fares today. The companies displayed notices at bus stops as well as termini and interchanges to alert passengers of the new fares. The Executive Council last month approved the hikes of between 3.9% and 7% for Longmen Bus, Kowloon Motor Bus, New Lantau Bus, City Bus and New World First Bus. New World First Bus will merge into City Bus next month. KMB monthly pass will remain at $780 until September 17th, after which an additional $20 will be put in place. Today is Father's Day, and families celebrate in a variety of ways. Apart from going to Chinese restaurants, some choose to bond with their dads by trying out new sports. Sakura Ip spoke to some of them.
Instead of a kiss, how about a big boy fight on Father's Day to bond with dads? A fencing school held a workshop in a shopping mall this afternoon for parents and kids to have a taste of the trendy sports of fencing.
They got to enjoy something and get some instruction in something that they haven't tried before, and it was fun to see them taking to something new. Especially, with sports and trying anything new and seeing how they react to it and seeing what kind of things they really enjoy or kind of piques their interest.
Mr. Young said he wanted to create memories with his son, and fencing is one of them. While the kids fight with their dad, the fencing school has prepared plastic foils for the workshop to prevent injuries. Yum Cha is one of the traditional must-do events on this festive day. Relatives and friends gathered to share dim sum and family time. Some celebrated it with 3 generations in the family despite the heavy rain this morning. This Chinese restaurant in Kwun Tong was fully seated. Mr. Boon enjoyed every second with his grandson in his arm. Mr. Choi came from the mainland for a family reunion, the first time in 3 years after the pandemic. The manager of the restaurant said he has been fully booked throughout the weekend. He expected a 30% growth in business compared to pre-pandemic times. Being short of hands, the restaurant offered a 30% rise in salaries to hire more casual workers. Sakura Ip, TVB News.
It is common for society to believe that as children age, they will spend less time with their parents. But is that necessarily true? Several pairs of parents and children working in the same company beg to differ. As on this Father's Day, many parent-child duos took the opportunity to share how they bond through work. Timothy Lee tells us more.
A remote-controlled car may serve as a fun childhood memory for most, but this toy defined the careers of this father and son pair of the Mann family. Man Yu-wan said when he was 7 years old, his remote-controlled car suddenly malfunctioned and had to ask his electrician father to check what went wrong. The father, Man Keng-hwa, then took apart the car and quickly found some faulty parts in the toy, which sparked his son's lifelong interest in the electrician field. But the father-son relationship only blossomed when the junior man joined his dad in the Electrical and Mechanical Services Department, or EMSD. He noted that his father used to miss several of his school activities when he was younger, and was frustrated by the senior man's lack of work-life balance. But after joining in the same line of work, he understood that his father was serving the public all along. Man Keng-hwa said he would often teach his son more about being an electrician after work or during dinner, and those conversations brought them much closer to each other. Another parent-child duo in the EMSD are the Chois. Choi Kin-wai works as a chief technical officer, while his daughter, Choi Lok-ching, is currently an engineering intern. Mr. Choi said his daughter was also inspired by him during her childhood years, but he never expected her to work in the same government department. We have always been friends since I was a kid, so our relationship has always been warm and relaxing, said Lok-ching. She added that after joining EMSD, she finally saw how hardworking her father was and has set a good example for her to follow. Father's Day may be a once-in-a-year occasion for most, but for the Mans and Chois, every day could be a happy Father's Day. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
That's the news. Thanks for watching.